Okay, so this is going to be a fairly one take, not rehearsed, not scripted. Uh, just overview of my thoughts on the Haikyuu movie, which I saw tonight a couple hours ago. Um, yeah, I mean, we'll start with the plotting. Um, like this first section will be spoiler free, so you don't have to worry about that. I'll leave the spoiler section for second half of this. But as far as the plot goes, I mean, it got all of the major plot points down, I would say. Having gone with a couple people who haven't read the manga, they all felt like it was a good movie plot wise, and they got the gist of it. So I'll leave plot kind of uh, for later, but if you're watching it with folks who are anime onlys, they will not have missed anything. They'll get the gist of the plot and of the match, and they'll overall enjoy it. At least the folks who are with me. So, as for the themings of the match, this is the big match between Nekoma and Karasuno, and it's the first time that Nekoma or that Karasuno, excuse me, Karasuno is facing off against Nekoma since the training camp, and it's kind of a reflection of themselves too, right? All these different players on the other side of the net that they have been training alongside and seen as rivals, but also teachers and also friends for a long time. So highly anticipated match, and can't really get too much into the themes because the themes are somewhat interwoven with certain events, but the general themes are gotten across. Just kind of wish they had given it a little bit more time. So, yeah, let's move into the animation. I mean, the animation is stellar. It's a movie. You'd hope that the animation would be good. I will say they give off the vibe of a volleyball match. Now having played in more than a couple volleyball matches to my name, definitely has that same frenetic pace. Especially like the last sequence, for example. Not to spoil anything, but when you get the ball in the air and you hope somebody else is behind you to try to get it up, especially if you know it's a bad dig or a bad receive. I mean, it's some of the smoothest and the most fluid animation that Haikyuu has seen, and it's a welcome change since season 4 was not awesome in parts, shall we say. But I mean, the animation's stellar, and if you're looking for fluidity, I mean, the movie's got it in spades. So hats off to Production IG for that. In terms of the music, I mean, I love the Haikyuu music. Yuki Hayashi and Asami Tachibana, I believe is his name. Fantastic composers. Like, their ability to compose just using leitmotifs and certain themings and using sound effects and all that sort of thing. They have a very deep soundtrack. Because of the length of the movie, and I commend Yuki Hayashi, excuse me, for the work that he did, because I know that there were, oh gosh, I don't know, like 30 to 40 tracks. I'd listened to the soundtracks before the movie, and I think the unfortunate part is because of the length of the movie and kind of the pacing of it. I feel like a lot of the songs, if they had been like extended to their 3 or 4 minute potential full lengths, like would have been so much better. But I know the soundtrack itself is like 1 to maybe 2 minute like little clips. It felt like, and so there weren't any particular standout tracks. I mean, there's the leitmotif for Gears that shows up a couple times, but I can't say that there were any super standout tracks. I mean, the credits song by Spire is awesome. Love that song. I've been listening to it nonstop today and a bunch of days leading up to this movie. Scenes I'll leave for the spoiler section. Um, Suffice it to say, they definitely cut out a fair chunk of scenes, it feels like, in terms of quotes and some really awesome moments for a lot of different characters. It feels like they focus a lot on the rivalry between Kenma and Hinata, which is cool. It's just a shame because Haikyuu is more than just, you know, two characters, right? It's about all six of the guys on the court, all six of the guys on the other side, and the bench players too, right? And the coaches especially. So I'll talk more about that in the spoilers section. I will say that the ambiance and kind of the environment, the feel of the movie is pretty awesome. I've never watched Haikyuu in a theater, but just the feeling of being in an actual volleyball match. I mean, the sound design is pretty awesome. Like you can feel the weight of the hits. You can hear the breathing constantly. Like you can tell that Krasno is tired. You can tell that Nekoma is tired. There's a huge emphasis on sweat and just this idea of exhaustion, right? When you're moving nonstop and you're pushing, and you just want to see the ball drop on the other side to get that point. I can relate. I wish I could play matches like them, but I'm not to that level. But yeah, just that feeling of being in a match that is an energy drainer that is a tough one. The movie definitely does well on that front. The pacing is a little funky. I would say that sometimes it'll flip between flashbacks and action, and I don't entirely feel like they are natural feeling. Granted, Haikyuu, in its anime form in the manga, they do this too, right? That's not a new thing. Haikyuu is built on the back of its characters and the character development and kind of seeing what drove characters to that point. I mean, I make videos on that. Sometimes the pacing was a little funky, it felt like, and certainly points go by like that, right? They go by lickety split. I remember at the end of the movie, one lady in the theater was like, "That's it? Wait, they won?" Right? She was pretty confused, but definitely, I think every Haikyuu fan can say and would agree that the movie would benefit from a season, right? One season, maybe like 8 to 9 episodes, something, right? Obviously, the animation quality would go down, but I think everything else would improve. That's a personal opinion, but yeah, I have some more thoughts on the pacing, but I'll leave that for the spoiler section as well. Suffice it to say, I think it feels a little weird, but that's a personal opinion, I think. The folks I was watching it with felt like it was a good movie, so it seems like that was accomplished. So all in all, a solid watch. I think it's worth watching. I mean, if you're a Haikyuu fan, definitely watch it. I don't know why you're watching this video if you're not a Haikyuu fan. Maybe you just want to hear some thoughts, but all in all, solid movie. I would probably say like a 7 out of 10 for me. I mean, I take off the other points for some of the things I'm going to talk about in the spoiler section, and hopefully that'll be a little bit more organized than this. So yeah, stick around if you want to hear more spoilery things, I guess, and some of my thoughts on primarily things like the plot, the themes, certain scenes, pacing, that sort of thing. So okay, you're in the spoiler section now. This is a repeat. You're in the spoiler section now, so if you're an anime only, I wouldn't be here unless you want to be spoiled by things. I would recommend that you would read the manga. I think the manga is far superior to the movie, just my opinion, but you're welcome to do as you will. So let's get started on this spoiler section. I'll start with the plot. As I had mentioned, the plot is fairly connected. The main issue is that most characters, if they're not the main characters, if they're not Kenma uh, or Hinata, Kuru to a lesser degree, Tsukushima to a lesser degree, basically they don't exist. They have very few scenes, or they get maybe one. Asahi has so many moments in this match, and they're not huge moments per se, but he has a lot of moments, a lot of points, no touch aces, stuff like that, and they're all cut. Like, all of them are gone. They don't exist in this movie. It's not exactly related. I remembered it just now. I should have talked about it during the not spoiler section, but there's a subtitle error where it just like stayed on screen for a while and it clearly was wrong. Another thing that they didn't do, which is kind of irksome, is when there is background dialogue or current dialogue, right? Sometimes when you watch Crunchyroll or some other anime subscription service, whatever, basically some of the dialogue will be on the top and it will be on the bottom too, right? And so you can separate it. They didn't do that. They just kind of put it on top of each other, which not the greatest. Kind of annoying. Not a big deal. Just thought of it. I will say the end credit scene definitely got some people hyped. Some people actually left before the end credit scene. They missed out. But the hype trails for the Kamo Medai versus Kurosano match, which I really, 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 really hope that they give that an actual season. Like, it's probably one of my favorite matches. I think there's so much to talk about. I've already made a video on Hirogami, and there's so much to talk about there. But the match as a whole, one of my favorite matches. It would be such a shame if they didn't give it its proper due. Just like they didn't exactly give this one its proper due, but I'll talk about that here in a second. But as I said, for your anime-only friends, or for folks who don't want to watch or don't want to read the manga, would rather watch all of it, the movie will get its point through, right? It was funny hearing people talk about what happens next. Oh, they're playing Kamo Medai. Surely they've got to win. And in my in the back of my head, I'm like, oh man, you guys are in for such a treat, in my opinion. I love the Kamo Medai, the way that it ends. I have so much more to say on that. I'll just kind of leave it at that right now. But, and for some reason, if you're still listening, go read it. Don't hear me talk about it. I think it's a really, really, really awesome match. Let's move on to themes. I don't have too much more to say on the plot. I'll cover a ton of things I thought about, scenes that were cut out or other things. I'm kind of bummed, actually, that a lot of themes weren't stated. There's, Haikyuu is just full of quotes. I love quotes. The one about being each other's teachers, but they're also rivals, right? And these guys are really, really good. That's why we hate them, right? That was cut completely, if I'm remembering correctly. Kind of tradition and creating your own story, right? Like, the background between Coach Nekomata and Ukai Sr. didn't even exist, right? It's kind of a bummer that part is completely cut out. It sucks. I really, really like that background. I think it gives a lot of basis for why these two teams have such a rivalry. And granted, they've created their own story, right? They've created their own rivalry, but lots of people are looking forward to the match. And it's not just the current Kurosano and the current Nekoma. There's this idea of evolve or die, right? You don't want to be left behind, that falling behind would be such a waste. Obviously, Hinata is given proper weight. I'd argue he could be given more weight, actually, which I'll talk about here in a second. I don't think enough timing or credit, and this is a little bit of pacing. I'll talk some random thoughts about pacing at the end, but Nekoma adapts to Hinata frighteningly fast, right? And across the manga, you can kind of, across the chapters, you can see kind of what they're thinking, kind of what they're laying out for him. Uh, and it's awesome to kind of watch that back and forth between the two teams as they're adjusting to this, Nekoma has a synchronized attack, Karasuno ever aggressive, Nekoma's defense. I wish that got more weight in the story. I definitely feel like in my matches, right, when I've played volleyball, uh, the limited amount last couple years, just the chance to when you're playing against a great player, right? For example, a couple weeks back, there was this absolute powerhouse of a player that we were playing against, and essentially we started double blocking her. We started trying to make sure that if she was going to dink, uh, we'd have someone up front. And if she was going to try to slam it on us, right, we had a couple people back. Right, we kind of had to adapt our strategy to that, but that was a multi-point, multi-set process, and we ended up losing. But that isn't given any weight here in this match, really, because of the pacing, because of the limited runtime. So that's just kind of a bummer. Tsukushima gets his scenes, but they're really fast. They're quick. Obviously, if with what Tsukushima has gone through and kind of having his moment in season 3, watching him actually become this player who enjoys the game of volleyball. The fact that he admits that it's fun should be a huge thing. It's given maybe 15 seconds, right? As is kind of the scene where he scores later in the match and laughs. That's given not very much time either. I think they hit on it. Rather than fear, it's respect and interest, right? Excitement and reverence for the chance to play a skilled opponent. That's a great quote. I wish they had kind of played that in more, and that kind of plays into the side characters, which I'll talk about in those scenes later. But this respect isn't just between Hinata and Kenma, right? It's between literally all the players on these respective sides. These players who have played each other a bunch in training camp, have respect for each other's skill, and want to play a really freaking good match. And that was just kind of a throwaway line. I love that quote, though. Yeah, I mean, as far as the theme, I mean, the whole manga is themed around it, right? Volleyball is fun, and I'm actually really, really curious. I'm recording this before I hear about how my friend's wife, who has not watched Haikyuu at all, was not really interested in volleyball, how she took the movie because she went with him. Really interested to hear about that, but I feel like the movie gets across this idea that volleyball is fun. It's a great time, and that's a huge part of the series. Kind of wish that they had Akane's quote that the idea that there isn't a single person out there on that court who isn't amazing to watch, and that kind of ties into the fact that just about all the side characters kind of just get absolutely cut out. Maybe they have a scene or two. They don't do anything notable. They don't really have a moment in this match. It's going to be mega lost in a crunched movie. That's somewhat of a pacing thing, and it's an issue. Basically, the coaches and their strategies, their development of that, and them settling their teams down, right? Like Nekomata telling Liev, after I think he hits a short serve or something, and Liev's like, I shouldn't have done that. And he tells Liev that, the most meaningless thing to do is just to do it, right? You think, you try, you fail, you try again. That's the way you should do it. And yeah, Ukai Jr. telling his team, given the choice between hitting a serve that would go over the net and being aggressive and facing the potential of missing, well, the correct answer is to be aggressive and not miss. That is what you should be doing, right? I think, that I'm paraphrasing, I'm kind of rambling that, but I feel like there's so much more to the match. Once again, it's a movie. They kind of had to condense it down. I think it's enough about me rambling about themes. Yeah, the scenes. Oh man, the scenes. There's so much cut content. Not enough, kind of relating back to this idea that we're each other's teachers. We may be rivals, but we're each other's teachers. Admiration for their opponent, right? Like, the biggest one I've heard is Yaku and Nishinoya, right? These two super liberos who are top of their class, super good. They don't get many chances to basically be like, yeah, that guy on the other side, he's freaking good. Tanaka and Yamamoto, they don't really get any chances to be like, yeah, that guy over on the other side, he's a real man's man. Liev and Inoka with Hinata, Inoka literally has one scene. I'll hit on that here in a little bit, but the two of them don't really get to banter with Hinata, and both of them kind of have a little bit of a thing with him throughout the series, and that just gets completely thrown to the wayside. It bothered me that there's not even a mention of the implied history between Nekomata and Ukai Sr. Like, they don't even show that scene, their backstory. It's kind of implied. People can probably pick up on it, but I really like this idea that they'd been waiting for this moment for so long. They had played in school, had maybe one chance, didn't even make it to play each other, and waited and waited and waited. And Ukai Sr. didn't even get the chance to carry on this tradition, but his grandson is, right? Somewhat unrelated, forgot to mention, like, the perspective, the first person point of view shots, the bird's eye views of the game, those are, like, super cool. Those are super awesome to watch. Makes you actually feel like you're there, and I felt as if I were there and playing, as I do, right? Back to scenes. Thinking back about Tsukishima, my brain's all over the place right now, as you could probably tell. His moments in this match, once again, aren't given the proper gravity. As a character who absolutely despised volleyball, if you watch this movie, you'd just be like, oh, it's that's cool, that's all right. But if you know his backstory and kind of who he is and what he is, like, that moment when he high-fives Yamaguchi is like a huge deal. This is a guy who is like a stone-faced stoic 90% of the time, right? When he shows emotion, it's a big deal. And here he is celebrating with one of his teammates when he doesn't really celebrate with his teammates, right? His other scenes were just kind of there. I didn't really feel... I feel like the weight of them was not left long enough, because they were like, oh, we got to get on to the next scene. We gotta move this match along. One of my most anticipated parts, where Asahi, I think, gets a set, and he sees Yaku, and he doesn't hit it in that direction. And Bokuto says something like, Yaku is like the sort of libero who can kill a hitter without even touching it. That's such a cold line. Like, it doesn't even get included. It's such a bummer. Let's talk a little bit about Kageyama. Kageyama is a true side character in this movie, which is a huge bummer, because he has some really awesome lines. They cut out the part where Kuro is like, it's been clear since that first game who Krasno's biggest monster really is. Like, it's Kageyama. And in my head I was like, well, except in the movie, because he doesn't really do anything. Like, I was looking forward to that quote. And, like, his decision to use a 4, a high set to Hinata, doesn't really get the build-up he deserves, because Kageyama kind of goes through this thought process of, evaluation and seeing what Nekoma's strategy is and realizing and getting some advice from Ukai, like, go out there and be bold. And Kageyama's like, you know what? I'm going to do that. Like, I'm going to break down this wall in front of my spiker. And, we don't get, like, any of the scenes of him, like, scoring service aces and just being an absolute monster, right? Like, the player he is, which is a huge bummer. Scenes outside of the match get cut or sliced, like they don't even exist. I mean, Tendo and Goshiki make their appearance, but they do offer more commentary on the sort of gameplay when observing like Asahi's block crusher. Once again, Asahi doesn't even you don't even see his no touch aces that he puts down during the match. Anoka's backstory. He comes in, he's there for one scene, he gets involved in like 2 plays. Or Kai telling him like good bump, nice receive. That's not in this. I was disappointed that Kurosano didn't get kind of their excitement over winning that second set. Right, this is the first time that they've beaten Nekoma. Ever, really, right? Like, since the training camp, they've just lost and lost and lost and lost. They lose the first set. In the manga, there's this line of them, like, being like, man, like, it would mean so much to us if we could just win this first set. The second set, they win it. And then the movie just kind of moves on, which, I get it, pacing, time. I feel like I've been doing a lot of complaining. One of the scenes I did like is when Kenma comments that Kurosano has shoyoitis, and all of them just basically become Hinatas. I think that's hilarious. There's like an extra scene that is really funny to look at and watch, or excuse me, to read. And it's like just a Kageyama rendition, but to see everybody kind of with their little Hinata wigs, it's a pretty good scene. I think it's unfortunate. I mean, I've only watched the movie once. My memory's a little fuzzy at the moment. It's kind of late for me. But I think there's only maybe 2 fours in the movie when, right, Kageyama gives him, I don't know, 6 or 7. The first one is a complete flub, right? Hinata kind of hits it with his fingers. They kind of hit the fact that, like, he has practiced this, like, this did not come out of nowhere, right? Like, his whole time in his volleyball journey, he's been hitting these high sets from people who don't play volleyball, right? Whether that's from his middle school teammates, from, like, the women's volleyball team, from, like, his classmates just throwing the ball in the air, right? He's been hitting these 4s, like, since his very beginning of his volleyball journey, and he hits a lot of those, whether that's off, like, wipes or that poke in the back, which I think they do include, slamming it between people. Like, Hinata gets some really, really good scenes, and yet while they focus on him in the movie, they don't even talk about, like, they don't even show those 4s, which, once again, pacing, timing, it's a movie, we gotta keep things moving, but those are such cool scenes. Back to something I liked. The Kenma Kuro flashback, really well done. They're really cute to watch. And it definitely lays some good groundwork, and I know folks who were just anime onlys watching the movie were like, that's a good scene. Man, I love the volleyball action. I definitely think the pacing of the volleyball itself is quite good, like, watching certain scenes. I think the pacing of the match itself is a little shaky. But I wish there had been more of the third set, right? As I mentioned in the non-spoiler section, just a lady being like, wait, that's it? They won? This idea, like, let's play the best game of our lives. And those chapters detailing the third set are... There's not much dialogue, there's not much monologue, and there's not much thought, right? It's just these 2 teams at the height of their games just playing their hearts out. I wish we got to see more of that. And we get to see a little bit of that with the first-person perspective of Kenma, and a couple other things, but I wish there had been more. Oh, a big one that I almost completely forgot. They didn't include Nishinoya's leg save. Like, that is such a cool scene. Like, the reflexes, and I think he scores off of it or something. Like, they didn't include it. They cut it. And that's, once again, bummer. Like, a huge bummer. Let's talk a little bit about pace. I feel like I've kind of already hit on it. Yeah, it's squished. Like, there's so much more to this match. I just railed off a ton of scenes. And I know people really, really liked this match, which I think is a huge bummer. It felt like to me the first match was really short. The second match was pretty drawn out. Like they slotted in their flashbacks and monologues there. And I felt like the third match was pretty quick too. Once again, I get it. I understand why they had to do it. I wish it had been done better. Or, obviously turned into a season, because it would have been cool. Haikyuu has never been about instant gratification. Like, to score a point, there's no easy way. Like, you gotta grind for that point. You gotta work for it. And, Kenma's setting up that trap. Nekoma's trap on Hinata, it's a long process, right? Like, as I said earlier, like, when we played that powerhouse player, like, it took us sets and multiple points to even figure out a way to deal with them. Because it's like, they're just so good. They're such a threat. And I really wish I'd been given more deliberate time, right? They kind of include bits and pieces of it. I felt like it was a little disjointed. That's just me. But the movie makes it really hard. And I think what we got, I'm grateful that we got it. Didn't know if I'd get to see Haikyuu again on any form of media. And, to dive into the next movie, I think it would be such a shame if they crammed all of Kamomedai into one movie, which that seems to be the way we're trending. And then, maybe, hopefully, did a third movie and crammed all of the time skip into that. But I think that would just be such a bummer. And I have thoughts on the time skip. Actually, fairly positive ones, but I'm not going to discuss them here. I've already talked for 22 minutes. But I think it would just be such a shame if they didn't give this amazing series what it deserves. And if they ended after the Kamomedai match, it'll be disappointing. I think that's okay. If they do it at the end of that part where today you're the defeated, what will you be tomorrow? Or yesterday you were the defeated, what will you be today? Whatever the translation of that is. If they do that, and they don't try to cram in the time skip, I'm okay with that. If it comes down to that, do the Kamomedai match right. Please do that right. Yeah. Well, if you made it this far, thanks for listening. I hope you go see the movie yourself. Develop your own opinion on it. I literally just rambled about it for 30 minutes. Unscripted, one take. Good stuff. At some point I'll also have another Haikyuu video coming out soon that I've been working on, and a big one that at some point will come out soon. So stay tuned for that. But hope you have a great day, night, afternoon, whenever you end up watching this. And I'll see you again next time.